Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another thing where we talk about things. Today, the final chapter of the Burland Campaign.
Yes.
And yes, stuff like that.
I couldn't find my jacket or my blue shirt, so this is the only shirt with buttons I have left. And I guess I'll bring up the shaving. I've not shaved in a very long time, so I'll leave it up to you, the viewers. Do I shave this, keep the chops growing, or do I trim the chops and start growing full beard? Interesting proposal, right?
That is the DonSomewhere.com news as of this week. That is what we are doing. So, yes, the Burland Campaign.
Right.
The final session, I think, because yeah. So anyway, in the final session of the Burland Campaign, we actually had everyone was split up. No, I'm getting ahead of myself because there was everyone tried to catch Aaron.
When we went to and have the big encounter with Aaron Bassanio.
Yeah. The group found out because they were cavorting with Los Boca, who told them everything. They went to his house and he was like, "Oh, my friends, let me tell you everything I'm doing that's evil and wrong." And they were like, "Oh, that's great. Who is telling you to do all this stuff?" And he goes, "Oh, Aaron Bassanio, leader of Bassanio Corp, big guy. Everybody knows he's in charge of all that." And so the group said, Aaron Bassanio. We should go and beat him up. And and so they looked
We
it up.
got all gung-ho about it.
Yeah, they looked it up, and Aaron Bassanio was, out of town because he was a big CEO. He was, almost never in town. But they figured out when he was coming back into town, and everyone drove on down to the airport in the flying car, and they parked it, and they waited, with binoculars. And I remember it was one of those things, they spent so much time waiting for him to come out, because he'd flown a private jet. And so they didn't know when it landed. They didn't have any information on it because none of that stuff would be listed realistically.
Yeah.
So the party just sat around for a long time. Like, did we miss it? Did we miss it? Did we miss it? And then finally, someone got in a limousine, and it was it had a motorcade. And so they're pretty sure, they're like, that's probably it. Probably. So the group takes off after this guy. They follow along behind him. And I can't remember if you guys did anything threatening to the motorcade, but you must have.
We had to have.
Yeah, I think you were flying overhead. Over them on the highway. And I think at that point, Scuba Steve hadn't been spending any experience points because he's like, I don't know what I want because I'm the skills monkey and I don't have any skills I want right now. And so he'd saved up, a good 25 points, which actually in theory would just buy you, 150% of an assault rifle is what we found out.
Yeah.
But we didn't know the rules as well, and so instead, what Scuba Steve had was a high-powered, nested machine gun laser kind of thing.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Yeah, it was like a tank melting device because you were supposed to spend 5 times as many points on it as what Scuba Steve had spent. So, yes. So Scuba Steve had that, and I'm pretty sure that he attacked the head of the motorcade with it or something. Just something to try and throw him off. And so the motorcade took off, and helicopters showed up to intercept.
Yep.
And so then it turned out that we looked at the stats of the car, and the car was spec'd to do all kinds of crazy things by this point, but it didn't have any armor. So it just flew up and just it was a military helicopter. It was a civilian helicopter with military stuff equipped to it because
we had a flying van, but it was still a van.
Yeah. And this all made sense in context. I remember there weren't really too many eyebrows raised about all this because by this point Burland was such a mess.
Yeah, it was a wreck.
Yeah, that important people with helicopter escorts made sense. And so the helicopter showed up and just shot the car out of the sky. It was one of those. I think it didn't destroy the car, but the car took enough dings that it was if I go for one more half a round, then the car will explode and we will all die. So he lands and the motorcade piles out and there's a helicopter overhead and so everyone gets arrested kind of. Except
sort
it
of.
was more of
we
a
get arrested by private security.
Yeah. So what they do is they pile the group all into the limousine, and so sitting across from them is Aaron Bassanio, and you think that this is some kind of big move, and it's actually just a stunt double in a ball cap and like a fake wig.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so then they sit there, and I remember that was one where the party was like, oh, you got us. You expected that people would wanna like kidnap you.
And you were totally right.
Because you're a rich guy in the most burned out part of the world right now because of super poverty, and there was super crime, super poverty. Everything was super.
Wherever there is super crime, there is super poverty.
Yes. So, yeah, it was super poverty. And anyway, so I think the group tried to insist that they were superheroes, and they badgered and they pushed and they passed enough roles that they did manage to get an audience. They took him to Bassanio Corp and they sat him down with Aaron Bassanio, who was present. He'd already gotten to his place, and the stunt doubles had caught their bait like that. And so he sat down.
To our surprise, Aaron Bassanio wanted to sit down and speak with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because the group had gotten some notoriety by then. They were in the newspaper.
Yeah.
I remember Lyman was in. He went to the school newspaper, in fact, and he was like putting stuff in their local. Yeah. Their local whatever. So. Yeah, so he sat down with the group, and then he was really nice, and he was really congenial, and he's like, so guys, I understand what you're trying to do, and I'm in big support of what you're trying to do. And he explained to them all these really logical reasons why vigilantism and being, like, freelance superheroes just wasn't, like, a good idea. And there's all kinds of, like, real-world practical reasons why superheroes just don't cut it. And I remember...
But then he got into, like, the in-universe reasons why what we were doing was bad.
Yeah.
Like...
There were a lot of them.
There was quite a few.
Yeah, and so he explained. It was very lovely. Because what the party didn't know was that I had assigned Aaron Bassanio, and he was a really high-level character, but you couldn't tell because he had basically human stats, but he could pretty much, like, read minds, and more importantly, he could read emotions on a really wide scale. So he could get up in front of a crowd, and he could read the feelings of the entire crowd, and down to, like, a very precise art. Like, he would know... is the guy in the back, is he pissed, and whatnot. So he could kind of fine-tune his arguments. And so it was one of those things like, the party just got rolled over in diplomacy. It was one of those things. Yeah. Everyone kind of like left, and they were all feeling bad because he gave a tailored speech. He talked about specific things that everyone had done that were very, very bad, that they were very, very proud of up until that point.
I just like... The mental image I have in my mind is us going to his building all gung-ho, and like 10 minutes later, and us just all leaving the building like...
He was best supervillain ever. Just... Everyone was depressed. There was a whole backstory about this too, was that previously Aaron Bassanio's company was owned by a supervillain called The Man. And The Man, his weakness was rock music or something like that, and so he was Rocker Man's arch nemesis. And that was the whole thing, but Aaron Bassanio had bought the company. And so he's like, so I can see why you think that Bassanio Corp might have been associated with all these things, but we've long since put that behind us, and the company is moving forward, and it was a great PR game. So the guys all go home, dejected, defeated. I mean, not really physically defeated, but they've lost their cause. So they don't know what to do. The group splits up, and I remember Joel goes down to the arcade. And on the following day... a giant spacecraft rises up out of the ocean and fires giant spinning gears on gyroscopic gears into the city. And they just like trash regions of the city, including areas that were popular hangouts for the party.
Yeah.
And none of us were hanging out in our old places, partly because we were all depressed and didn't want to go where old memories were.
Yeah.
And that actually saved us. Every single one of the old hangouts got demolished. But I was GMing this, and I went around and I asked everyone, I was like, what are you doing? Where are you? What are you doing? Where are you? And I was going to have them, like, roleplay through oh god, these giant gyroscopic gears start flying in.
I think maybe Joel was at the junkyard.
No, he wasn't.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I am absolutely sure he wasn't, because he was at the arcade, and that was a big deal. Because I think that you guys went to the junkyard to look for Joel, and you assumed that he got killed. And
yes.
That's when you met his boss.
Yeah. Who
was a hippie. And he gave you something to smoke. Yeah, he
brewed up the drinks, the hallucinogenic beverages, and he gave me one of them.
Yeah, so we got grouchy.
Which is a thing Alex still quotes to this day. I've seen him post it. So there was a bit where Grouchy got high, essentially. And I was just saying whatever random crap came into my brain. And the one thing I said that I think stuck with everyone was, one time I ate my weight in cheese and vomited the entire cast of Battlestar Galactica.
It wasn't just the line. It was just the way that you told us, like you were...
It was like, hey!
No. You sounded embarrassed about it. Like it was something that you... It was a past regret. Like you wish you could have taken it all back. Like it just didn't work out the way you planned. I remember that because you had the jetpack and you were just messed up. And then Joel came back to check to see if everything was all right, and we found we kind of regrouped around the junkyard, and we're just like, oh crap, everything's wrong. And I remember Joel was especially upset because he'd buried all of his life savings in the junkyard, and like now the junkyard was trashed and like cars had collapsed in places they weren't supposed to be, and so yeah, his life savings was gone. So. That's when then the starship hit, and what the starship was, it was an amalgamation of everything that we'd done up until that point. The Star Wars nerds, the Star Trek nerds, the gang by the piers. What they had done is they were actually gathering up people and taking them out to the ocean, and they were putting them down in this ship where they were turning them into Borg, but they were like stormtrooper Borg. So they gave him like training, hardware, equipment. They were walking around with like modified AT-AT, walker, ATST. What are chicken walkers?
That's ATST.
ATST. Little ATSTs were walking around, and but they were like, I can't remember what. I think they had shielding or something like that.
Yeah, it was something crazy.
Yeah, they were tough. So they just hit the place like a storm, and also the gear thing too. I'll say that's something that I had a really weird nightmare where this giant like turtle-like creature rose up out of the sea and did this. I was at like a big outdoor convention of some sort, and this turtle like fired these gears out of its back, and it destroyed this convention that I was at. And so it was just a weird dream that I had, that this whole thing, that this particular end scenario was based on. And anyway though, so everything hits, and so the party kind of goes into hiding, and they're like, oh crap, well, Aaron Bassanio was a dick. He lied. We were right all the time. We should have killed him when we
Everything we did was right.
Yeah, everything we did was right. Every murder, every civilian death, nothing was wrong. So, yeah, so that was like the revelation. That was we were wrong, but
yeah, we were still really wrong.
yeah, but we were confident again. So the party geared up, and there were a bunch of struts that were laid down by the ship. It actually covered up all of downtown, and there were, I believe, 5 or 6 struts or whatever, however many bosses there were.
Yeah.
And so each strut had a boss at it. And so the party went to one of the struts, and what they were doing with the struts is they were taking people to the struts, and the struts would funnel people, captives, up into the thing, and they'd get converted into Borg. And Aaron Bassanio was using his incredible mental powers to just control everyone. And so he was taking over the city. He was regulating the city by force, and in his mind it was a good idea, and I believe that he had some chance to talk to you guys about it a little bit, but it was a very short dialogue, or he might have
we
argued.
were really pissed.
Yeah. So anyway though, so the first place that the party went, and it actually went in order, is the first place that they went was to the Baseball Furies version, but these were Borg Baseball Furies, now with armor and everything like that, so they were amped up, they were super strong, they were robots. Cobb had been found, and his body, his head had been rebuilt, because that happened. Yeah, and so I remember that they had like chain guns, and they were like baseball firing chain guns, and they would cause like stun damage, but they would cause it so fast it could like incapacitate a party member in like a round.
Yeah.
And I remember on that one, I think that we got to the dugouts. There was like dugouts in the strut, and so everyone took cover on one side. And I'm pretty sure that at that point, Scuba Steve just had his mounted machine gun that he used to just shoot to death Cobb. I'm pretty sure that's how that went over.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a letdown on that one. Next, the group went on to the Vietnamese Asian Panese gang.
Yes.
Who we never really defined. Yes, and we found just
Chai, Korea, Japa, Viet. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, so we went down there, and it turned out that there was just like one lady with like a nail file, and she was doing reception. And so the guys pull up, and they're like, "Hey, is this where the villainy is happening?" And she's like, "Yeah, but no one is here right now." And then everyone was like, "Oh, okay."
All right.
And so the boss shows up,
Do we make an appointment or?
Yeah, and they're like, "No, you can come see our boss." And so the boss showed up, and he fought everyone by himself.
This is the one we never even fought before, wasn't it?
You'd never seen him before. You didn't know his name. His hair could stretch. That was his thing. He did hairstyle fighting.
That was one of the 2 games we pretty hastily got out of the way.
Yeah, because he showed up and he attacked everyone, and he was spec'd well for combat, but it was like, the whole party on the one boss, and so he did a few tricks to try and keep himself alive, but he didn't last for very long, so he got killed. And
we were beastly by this point.
Yeah, no, I remember El Gran Luchadore especially. Nathan was basically like a ghost. He was a phantom.
After the jetpack was the one other thing I spent points on besides pure strength.
Yeah, so you were basically just like a flying sack of bricks. You would just collide with stuff, and it would just, become a paste on the floor. And so Nathan was just a phantom. Joel had the monkey wrench now, but with the teleportation tricks, he was pretty lethal with that. Scuba Steve had the gun, which was ridiculous. I believe that Lyman had boosted himself up even further. I think he had a baseball bat still.
Yeah. He had the gun.
Oh, that's right. He
had a Glock.
He paid for a 9mm pistol for a handgun.
And superheroes.
Yeah, but he was indestructible though, and so he's like a normal guy, indestructible handgun. So he was probably the least. I mean, he wasn't like underpowered, but he didn't do much damage. He mostly just drew a lot of fire. So, yeah. But anyway, what we were doing is that each and every boss had a little authenticator sort of thing on him. And you needed all 5 authenticators. Like, they had radios, but they wouldn't communicate with it. But you needed all 5 authenticators to open up one of the doors and get people up into the thing. So that's what the group was doing, is they were trying to get all the codes so they could get into this stupid thing and get up there. And so the third guy. So we get to the third guy. Who is that? It was not the wrestler. Los Mocha had to have come last. Now that I think, because I think he was the last guy.
it was either the Star Wars guy we never even fought.
Yeah, the Star Wars guy who showed up, and I remember that when we made a commentary on the whole thing. Was the group gets in there, and the whole room was just filled to the brim with Borg stormtroopers. And I remember that everyone called bullshit on me. They were like, "Greg, we're not gonna fight like 200 stormtroopers. This is just bullshit." And I was like, "No. Just hear me out. Just do what you're going to do. And don't worry about it." And they're like, okay. So they get in the fight with the boss for this one, and he had his own like robot suit. Oh, and Darth Potato Meta.
Yes.
Yeah, Darth Potato Meta. They put Potato Meta because they killed Potato Meta at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they brought Mr. Potato Meta back as the Darth guy, and I think I did that because you guys had developed more of a rivalry, rather just a hatred towards Mr. Potato Meta. Yeah, then you had
out of character we loved Mr. Potato Meta.
Yeah.
In character we all despised him.
Yes, so they brought him back as Darth Potato Meta. At which point he just had a deeper voice and was in the way. He did have a lightsaber, but he wasn't using it to do anything. So.
How you boys doing?
Yeah.
How you boys doing?
I still have my wife. They're everything that's happened to me. Glad to see you again. So the party killed Mr. Potato Meta and that boss, and the stormtroopers fired on everyone, and I think they actually slaughtered more of their own guys. They never hit the party. It was one of those things, like, I didn't even roll to hit. I was like, oh yeah, they're doing their best, but they just cannot land a target. They are shooting each other quite a bit, though, so if you want to hang out, sooner or later it might get down to one stormtrooper, and you'll have to kill him. But you could just leave. Everything's fine. So, yeah. That was after all the suffering that I went through trying to manage my own stormtroopers, I figured that was appropriate. Seemed about right. So, the next group, that was Courtney. And Courtney was actually just a full-on android.
Yeah.
Because somebody asked, I said, what happened to Courtney after we explained the spin that the vehicle went into? Courtney was never recovered.
Yeah.
They didn't find what happened to him. That was a high-velocity thing. And
He was dead to a point where we couldn't explain him away as a cyborg. That dead.
Yeah, he was ruined. So he was there as an android. And so the party got to fight the android version of the breakdancing Courtney. And I can't remember what all he did. I think he might have had a small team of dancers that were all kind of doing similar stuff. It was like he was the leader, and he had a small squad that was doing similar stuff. And it was all like organized. It was kind of like a Michael Jackson routine.
Yeah.
If you want to imagine
very well
that.
choreographed.
Yeah, it was a very well choreographed battle. And so the party defeated him, and finally came Los Boca, who was so strong that I think I didn't actually level him up. I'd been leveling the NPCs a bit to try and keep everyone on par with the party so that they provide a challenge. But Los Boca from the start was nothing but combat, and he was so developed into it that the party still couldn't beat him. And so I quit leveling him. Because even though it put him behind the other guys were kind of well-rounded, and they had their gimmicks and the things that they did. So Los Boca invited everyone up to his strut for a big wrestling match. And this was sort of a rematch of the latter thing that El Gran Luchadore lost way back when.
Yeah.
It was a 5-on-1, and the only catch was that everyone had to put their weapons down. So they lost the monkey wrench, Lyman lost his handgun, and Scuba Steve lost his...
I think I took off my jetpack.
You might have done that. I think you did.
Yeah.
Because it was also the ring was suspended on great big chains, and so if you fell out of the ring, you fell into an abyss, and then you were dead.
Yeah.
And I remember that at one point somebody, I don't remember if it was you, but somebody got tossed out of the ring and was hanging on for dear life on the side of the rings, and the party started to lose. And they were losing so badly that I think that finally someone got down on their hands and knees, and they actually groveled to Los Boca. And Los Boca didn't like that, because you weren't supposed to grovel, you know, this was not honorable, you know, like Los Boca was battling you fair and square. And
did someone blow him then?
That was after. After the party sat down, and I remember Scuba Steve was pissed. Like, he was mad. I think that he got really messed up, because Scuba Steve was the only one who was basically not a character who could do anything once we took away his weapon.
Yeah.
So he was just pissed because it was totally one-sided for him. It was one of those things like Los Boca would just stiff-arm him out of the way and like handle the real threats. And yeah. So, but the party started to talk to him, and they were like, Los Boca, no, we're your friends, you know, we're your friends. Aaron Bassanio is a
Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo, remember Cinco de Mayo? Ha! Friends, that's right, that was great. You know, yeah, great. So, yeah. So he started to laugh, and he was like, I remember the good times. You're right, my friends. I love you. And so they made amends, and then they're like, just give us the authenticator, Los Boca. And he's like, okay, I am sorry for what I have done. You know, he started to repent, and he apologized, and he was like, everybody, you know, like everybody. I wish you the best of luck, but my wife would be furious if I killed her brother. And so, yeah. So he gave him the authenticator, and then Scuba Steve came up with the machine gun and just shot Los Boca in the back of the head. And I remember how mad.
This is really unprofessional, but I have to check my phone.
Oh, really?
On my way, 10 minutes max. All right.
Okay. So yeah. So I remember everyone was just so upset, both in and out of character. Because they were like, why? Why did you do that? Like, except for Scuba Steve, who was very happy with what he'd done. Because he was mad. And everyone else was like, no! We turned him, he was on our team! And I'm pretty sure that the eventual way that we reconciled it was like, well, it's not our lowest point.
This is not, by far, not the worst thing we've ever done.
Yeah. I mean, we were attached to this guy. We really should have reacted this way to a lot more civilian deaths before this, but we knew this civilian death. We knew this guy. He wasn't even a civilian. So that was the sad death of Los Boca. And so finally, the group managed to get into the main ship proper. And and they had Katrina with them. And I remember I'd been gearing Katrina up for this the entire time. I'd saved up enough points for her to have one C4 charge. One that would be large enough to take down 2 options. And I remember that it was explained to them, you could take down the main generator, which was probably going to be really well guarded, both by automated and normal systems, or you could take down the control room for the psychic Borg stuff. And I can't remember how these 2 options were explained to you. It might have been Los Boca again, even telling you of these things. But the party opted for the psychic control thing because they figured that once they got the psychic control taken care of, they could probably handle the main generators. And the main generators weren't even the biggest deal anyway. That would just take the weapons offline and everything else.
Yeah.
So the party opted, and I had it planned out for what would happen if they did one or the other. But the party opted for the control thing. So they got to the control room, they fought their way in, they killed everyone in the control room. Katrina went to go set up her explosive charge, and this took a little while. And that's when the party got trapped by a kill team. As a kill team showed up, and they were armed with like thermal grenades, like, you know, SWAT, the equivalent of stormtrooper armor, I guess dark trooper armor.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, so it would have been dark trooper armor. And so they showed up and laid siege to the party. And things were kind of getting a bit messy as the party was having a hard time because they'd been fighting nonstop from boss to boss to boss to boss, and nobody had had time to recuperate. And during that time, that is when someone tossed a thermal detonator. And I remember it was a really good roll. It popped right up over one of the consoles that Scuba Steve was hiding behind, because he had the machine gun. And as a habit, I tend to usually target people who are doing the most damage. And this is one of those things, it's almost always the glass cannon too. I remember when we played, remember Nicodemus?
Yes.
In that Children of the Sun campaign, yeah. This happens a lot, where you get the glass cannon needs to be stopped, and then as soon as you do something like chuck a spear into the glass cannon dies, because they're glass.
Yeah.
So, so that's kind of one of those things. That's how you really punish min-maxers. You don't have to... I mean, some people don't even do it on purpose. It's just like one of those natural reward tendencies. It's like, oh, this is going really well. I'll invest more points into this, and more points into this. And then, oh, this is going really well. I'm killing everyone. And then suddenly the GM is like, I know, I'll throw a spear at you. And your character dies because you didn't prepare your character for the retaliation. Someone else had always been taking the damage. So anyway, though. So this is what happened to Scuba Steve, is he was doing all the damage. And so they tried to get suppressing fire on him. They threw the grenade really well. It landed in Scuba Steve's lap. He tried to roll to throw it back, fumbled the roll, and it blew up there in his lap, like where he was trying to pick it up. So we rolled damage, and Scuba Steve was dead. It was the final chapter, and we thought that was probably appropriate. It was fine for Scuba Steve to die then. And so that was an emotional... Joel freaks out, you know, because we've talked about... This is why I brought up that Joel was a closet homosexual throughout the entire time. Because Joel was kind of in love with Scuba Steve. And so this was like the death of his non-requited lover. Because Scuba Steve really never... Scuba Steve was Scuba Steve.
Yeah.
He never took off his wetsuit. I don't know why Joel had a thing for Scuba Steve.
He didn't talk.
He didn't talk. Yeah, he didn't talk. So, but Joel was just crushed. And I remember, I'm pretty sure that Joel went to Scuba Steve's body. And it was one of those things, I was like, stay with me, stay with me.
You said Skull, it's like you gave him a shipping name.
Yeah, Skull to Steve. Yeah, Skull. So he's like, Steve, stay with me, buddy. And it was one of those things, he tried to resuscitate him for a while, and that didn't work. It was some really good role playing. And so finally, like when he realized that Steve was not coming back, he grabbed the gun, and I'm pretty sure he killed a fair number of people.
Yeah.
We got things under control. By that point, Nathan had this ability to produce smoke, and it was like caustic. And so I remember that a lot of the front of the room had been filled up with smoke. And so between smoking them out and shooting them with lasers, we managed to get the area under control. We got the explosive charges set, and the party booked it. They made it out of there. They got down to the ground level, and the bomb went off and took out this control thing. So the party starts up the car, and they start to take off. And from the ship, out of one of the bays, comes a modified sort of AT-ST.
Yes.
And this one is modified to have jump jets. Basically, it's also, unlike the other ones that just have the lasers on the front, it's got a mounted gear weapon. And the gear can fly out, like hit stuff, and then come back, because that was just the theme, the villainy theme that I had. And so they chased the party down. I remember it had guns too, and the van had been slightly better armored. So I remember it taking punishment, and the party trying to fire out of the back with the gun. But Scuba Steve was the only one who had taken any skill in using the gun, and so the fire was not very accurate. And pretty soon, the van went into a nosedive. And this is
anytime we got in the van, I became useless.
Yes, yeah. So the van went into a nosedive. We finally declared the van dead. That was official. The van took so much HP damage that we could not reasonably say it was alive anymore. It went into a full crash. It hit the pavement, and Aaron was actually the guy who was in this ATST, and so he didn't slow down. He was just in for the kill because he was kind of a no nonsense, very pragmatic sort of guy. So he just comes up on the kill, and then Rubber Band Man leaps out of the alley with a giant rubber band grenade and just heaves it at the cockpit of the ATST. Explodes, just boom! And so completely out of the blue, Rubber Band Man destroys in a single round the final boss of the game. So everyone piles up and they're all like, Rubber Band Man! We're so glad you're alive and survived the attacks and everything. Oh,
hey,
buddy! Oh, we love you. And that was how Aaron Bassanio died. And it would have ended there, but we had one more little twist, and that was when we went and we fought the devil.
The epilogue.
Yes, the epilogue. And that was because the engine room was still functional. Nathan's mom, who it turned out had willingly consorted with the devil all this time to give birth to Nathan and knew that he was the Antichrist, she communed with the devil in her house after Nathan had moved out because she lost her mind. She couldn't believe that her baby was gone. And so the devil told her to go to the generator and do this thing and do these rituals. And she sacrificed herself to summon the devil. And so the party, so at that point, she was like calling over the loudspeakers. She's like, Nathan, come back. Like, Nathan, come back or I'll kill the whole city. So the party went to go face down the devil himself, who had become the generator.
Yes.
Essentially. I remember that one. Lyman didn't like that because of the fire. He didn't have immunity to fire.
Yeah.
It was something he hadn't thought about. And so the devil was naturally attacking with fire. Lyman got burned to a crisp, which was sad because I remember saying that we didn't really roleplay Lyman having a girlfriend, but I think I remember now that he did, and we didn't roleplay it very much because it was kind of...
None of us wanted to roleplay his girlfriend.
Yeah, none of us wanted to roleplay his girlfriend, and... I mean, partly it was just sort of like a trivial sort of thing. It was just like he just had they studied together and stuff, and so it was kind of like there wasn't really a lot to roleplay. So... Except for when Lyman died. Because I remember that the party went through a lot of trouble to actually kill the devil. It was one of those things like the teleportation. There was a lot of last-ditch craziness. Nathan was useless because I was jamming, and that's my habit. I don't really like to have DMPCs too much, except for to guard the party.
Yeah.
Or guide the party. And, so everyone pulled it together. Rubber Band Man got killed.
I, for the most part, if I remember correctly for that fight, was drawing fire.
You were, yeah, because
I was just flying around with the jetpack.
Yeah, well, you kept flying it right by the devil's ears, which was making him spend his attack rounds trying to swat you like a fly. Yeah. Like a mosquito. So,
and someone had the idea before me, and started doing it, but someone got a gun from one of the guards, and was up on the devil's shoulder and was shooting into his ear.
Yeah, Joel was doing that eventually. I'm pretty sure.
And I know he got swatted away.
Yeah, I think he fell unconscious, and I think you were holding him in one arm, and you got the gun in the other, and so it was one of those things, it was just sort of like, everything started to fall apart, and so the party was just doing everything they could to stay alive through this fight with the devil.
And I'm pretty sure that's how I killed the devil.
That's how El Gran Luchadore killed the devil and saved the world from the apocalypse. So El Gran Luchadore saved the planet. Saved from Satan. And yes. And so we said our farewells. Joel survived. We buried Scuba Steve. We didn't know what to do with Lyman because we didn't know who his family was, but we knew who his girlfriend was because we'd met her before and we knew where she lived. So we took his burned body to her doorstep and left it there. We figured she would she would know what
She'd know what to do.
Yeah, I can't remember if we left a note or not. I think it was something like, "Sorry."
Hope you know his family or something.
Yeah. Sorry, he died. We said.
Frowny face.
One last note of terrible, irresponsible behavior before we closed on the Burland Campaign. Well, not forever. We had some sequels, but nothing that ever quite took off quite as well as the Burland Campaign. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, best game that we ever played by many accounts.
We started off as like lowest possible level superheroes, and then I killed the devil.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. It lasted for all of summer, longer.
It was a year.
Yeah, it was like our whole. It was our farewell to one another kind of thing, because we assumed that it was like we're all going to college, and we've all kind of come back into town now.
Yeah.
But before we all thought we were leaving and never coming back. So yeah, so it was actually rather. It was a rather meaningful role playing session for all of us.
Actually, I have to split Captain America.
Okay.
Debut night.
All right. So yes, we'll catch you guys next time.